Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, my distinguished guest, and my colleague Simon. Thank you very much for your invitation. After a great lunch, maybe you got a little bit sleepy, but please open your eyes to go through some of the slides we want to share. Today's theme is Stop Climate Change, Together Possible with WWF. First of all, I'm here to celebrate this Climate Action Conference, not the Climate Talk Conference or Climate Discussion Conference. This is the time to take action together. In terms of the solidarity which you have shown to Japanese people was back in 1997 when you have suffered the Korean currency crisis, won crisis. At that time, I was so amazed that the Korean people are so united to save the country. This is the real people power, and I was so impressed and thankful for your wish to rebuild the country. At that time, you have gone through many severe and painful reconstruction or restructuring or transformation of the industry. But then, Korea became the world competitor against Japan or US or Europe in many fields, such as automobile, electronics, medicine, and so forth. So, Korean leadership is proven already in the history of Asia, and Asia becomes so important for the world stability. Take a look. In 2050, the world population will grow to a 9.2 billion. Oh, sorry. I didn't move my slide. Oops, sorry. Sorry. In 2050, the world population will go to 9.2 billion, out of which Asian Pacific population will grow to 5.3 billion, meaning that more than half of residents on the earth are Asian Pacific residents. And something which is very cherishing but also very concerning is that out of those 3.2 billion people are growing from poverty or low-income bracket to the middle-income bracket. And that's the time when consumption really grows. So if we let Asian population to consume products like we did in the past, we will have a very difficult situation to stabilize the world and make this earth to be sustainable. So your leadership, our leadership, or Chinese leadership, or Indian leadership is very important to make Asia-Pacific sustainable society, which only leads the world to be sustainable world. That's the kind of a mission we're bearing together in the long history of Asian country. So to take up our own part, we initiated the Japan Climate Initiative back in July 6 this year. And despite our concern that we may gather only 30 or 40 companies, we are kind of surprised and overwhelmed that we have more than 105 initial members, and now it's growing up to 214. Right after this conference, I go back to Tokyo, and then we will have a kickoff meeting of this initiative, and 214 companies are going to join, led by Mr. Hirai, the chairman of Sony Corporation, to inaugurate this kickoff. We have several missions to provide to JCI members that we want to recognize that all these private sectors, local governments, schools, and NPOs, NGOs, they are so-called non-state actors. And non-state actors are the party to drive the climate actions in this century. So we want to create a level playing field for Japanese non-state actors to make sure that we will get the fair recognition from the media, from the people. We are not just following the guidelines or rules set by government, but we are here to propose the necessary climate actions to the government. And also we want to tap on the advocacy power, because when we talk to the Japanese government, they always ask, is this an industry unified opinion, or is this agreed by all the competitors? But if we try to make a consensus within the industry, I think it is very difficult to, oops, sorry. Could you put it back? Thank you. Oops. Can I ask you to maybe flip the page on my behalf? Okay, yeah, all right. So we are making sure that we don't match the speed with the slower party, but rather we want to elevate the speed up to the fast runner or top runner. And this non-state actors' opinion to deliver to the central government is very, very important. As you may know, we have Sustainable Growth Development Goals, and we have 17 elements, as we show in this center chart. 17 elements are all important, but they are not all equal, because unless we have the very safe and very healthy earth, we cannot build the healthy society on top of it. And unless we have a very healthy economy and society, we cannot bring the prosperity on top of it. That's why I think that a healthy earth is the foundation of every people's happy life, and this is where we find our mission to play hard. Okay, JCI, it has a different meaning as well. Back in 1997, when we had a Kyoto Protocol, I'm sure that Japan was on the front runner of the movement. But 20 years later, after stagnation of the economy, our government is far behind from the leadership today. And I think it's our mission as a non-state actor to push our government back to the leading position and stable it. We have a power to say it, and we have a knowledge to do it, and we have a solidarity to encourage government to go back to the leadership position. And I believe that the renewable energy will be an important industry for Japan to stabilize the economy and benefit Japanese people. So up until last week, we thought that the 2-degree target is very challenging, but we need to achieve it. But now we have to work very hard, even harder, to achieve 1.5 degree. This is a very interesting challenge, which I share with many colleagues in Japan. JCI is trying to set four fields to collaborate together. One is the policy advocacy. Every industry wants to keep up with the Paris Agreement, which is not easy. But when we join together and share all the experiences and knowledge, not as a competitive field, but as a non-competitive field, I think we can boost up our common knowledge and experience to bloom as a know-how. And also, we want to bring more people to engage and act to build many experiences. We have already 7 companies entered into RE100, Renewable Energy 100, and also science-based targets. We have more than 60 companies, and 29 get the approval from the SBT, and 2 are also in line to get approval very soon. We need to expand the community with many other industries because Japanese companies are very shy, very kind of reserved. They don't want to be a front runner. They want to see some front runner to go ahead and then follow them instead of going fast. So with the initiative of the JCI, I think we can invite more and more people to understand that that's not the time to see anymore. It's a time to join and act. And of course, we want to seek for many international partners around the world with the WWF. So your KCI, Korean Climate Initiative, in some day will be a good collaborator or partner for us. And that will help China to move on and come up with the very aggressive plan. Let me a little bit talk about SBT, because I heard from Simon that some of the companies are a little bit skeptical about joining the SBT. Right now, SBT has almost 500 applicants, and already 139 companies or enterprise has been approved its plan. So it's about 28%, 29% of the companies have already engaged with and then get the plan approved to try to hit for below 2 degrees Celsius targets. And in terms of Japan, we have already brought in 64 companies, and 29 got already. So near about 40% of the applicants have got approval from the SBT. So compared to the initial goal to bring 250 companies by the end of 2018, we are far ahead of the plan, which means Korean company executives, worlds are moving ahead much faster than I thought. So it is a time for you as well, not to see and observe, but rather you consider seriously when to join SBT and commit yourself to come up with the plan. And there are many merits to be a member. Of course, you can manage the, you can predict and you can manage the risk in the future if you don't take action now, and also give a long-term competitive advantage to the future profitability, because the more you kind of rationalize your organization to fit to the renewable energy, the better conditions you can get from the financial community, from the society, from the media, to get the, acquire very talented young people from the university. So there are lots of merits. So what about the risks? Many people asked me, if we join SBT and if you fail to submit the plan or if you fail to achieve the plan, what will be the penalty? Good news is there's no penalty. What kind of legal penalty or financial penalty you have to pay? There's nothing. Of course, you need to work very hard. You need to submit your plan and keep the dialogue with the SBT members. But there's nothing to lose, nothing to harm. And some people told me that if I join SBT and if I leave SBT, we will penalize WWF Japan. So is that okay for you? But I said, no, you don't penalize anybody, because that's a very voluntary challenge which you take over, and we will all help you to make a plan. We will work with you, but we will not criticize you or we will not penalize you. That's the beauty of this SBT. But it was not easy to bring in those number of companies, to be honest. We have many approaches. The first was the introduction of SBT as an organization and get the help and support from other NGOs and government. And we supported technically how to apply to SBT and translate all the English materials to Japanese and understand one by one. And also sometimes as an NGO, we give a little bit of pressure. I'll talk about that later. And we try to help these challengers to get the recognition from the media or from the investors to make sure that there's a merit for those people. And then we requested them to influence the industry as a whole. So reviewing the history of membership of SBT in Japan, we started that back in 2014-15. And in 2015, there's only 4 companies who raised a hand to be to engage in SBT, which was Sony, Honda, and Nissan, and Kao. Only 4. All the rest were staying behind, relax, and watching what's going to happen. And then in 2016, 7 companies joined, such as Toyota Motors Company, and Yokohama Tire, and Daikin Air Conditioning, and so forth. And last year, 2017, 23 has voluntarily become the member. And this year, we have seen already 30 companies registered by themselves. And hopefully 2019 or 2020, we can expect another 100 to join. So movement is there. And once the majority or big leaders are moving forward, NGO will work with government to set the kind of regulatory policy kind of restrictions to push the people who are lagging behind to move forward. This is what NGO and government collaborate with each other and encourage the private sector to move on to the SBT. But taking as a concrete example, this is a kind of hidden story, so this is the first time to share with the foreign guest, but it was a very much struggle with the Toyota Motors. Toyota Motors has been supporting us, WWF Japan, for many years, over 20 years. And one of the Toyota executive, the founder of Toyota executive is our advisor as well. But when we evaluated the car industry, auto industry as a whole, who is making a long-term commitment, who is disclosing the target, who is inviting the third party to evaluate the progress, Toyota was not number one. So we unveiled the results of the research ranking report, and we published it, and Toyota came as number 4. So you can imagine that the top executive of Toyota was not so happy, and they invited us to the headquarters and say, "Hey Ron, what's wrong with this?" In 2014, Toyota, as you may know, opened the patent of 5,800 patents to make a fuel cell vehicle. So it is worth 50, 60 billions of dollars to make it free until 2020. It was a huge contribution to turn the fossil fuel society to a hydrogen society. It's a big, big contribution. That's one of the reasons why Toyota was very upset that WWF Japan ranked them as number 4. So they are very disappointed, they are very dismayed, and they challenged us. You are wrong, we are right. So in the headquarters, in the very small room with the bunch of the engineers, we said, we simply used your public information. We didn't alter anything. We just received your information and compare that from Toyota, the Honda or Nissan and other companies. And you don't have any commitment or target for 2050, how much CO2 you want to reduce. And you don't show the way how to do it. And you don't invite any third party like us or any research institutions to verify whether these plans are going to work or not. And they were very anxious, but then while we keep the dialogue, they come to change a little bit. And I encourage them that if you are going to be a number one auto industry, you should be transparent, you should be more aggressive, you should be communicable with the rest of the world. So they changed the internal corporate policy. In the past, they said, something we don't know, we will never commit. Something we cannot guarantee 100%, we will not communicate. But now they say that they have to change their corporate policy. So Toyota came to us and said, we are going to hold the environmental forum in 2015, October 14th. And can you join on the stage to talk to our chairman, Mr. Uchiyamada? I said, yes, why not? But I'm not big enough, so let me invite our Director General from Switzerland headquarters. And we did. We brought Marco Lambertini on the stage to talk with the head of the chairman of Toyota Motors in front of 100 media. And over there, Chairman Uchiyamada of Toyota Motors committed to reduce the CO2 emission by 90% by 2050. Once Chairman of Toyota declared that in front of 100 media people, they cannot back off. And then dialogue continued. What if you say 90%, why don't you say carbon zero? Well, they say, well, carbon zero is very difficult, and carbon reduction is maybe possible. But carbon zero and 90% reduction is totally different story. 80% reduction or 90% reduction will mean that we can alter the current carbon society with the better technology. But when you say carbon zero, it's a whole different ball game. We have to introduce new technology. We have to abolish the carbon-emitting devices. That's the second challenge. But they have all gone through it, and they came to the zero carbon society phrase into their organization commitment. But when you look at these slides, they didn't say Toyota Environmental Commitment 2050. They said Toyota Environmental Challenge 2050. Because as of now, they don't know how to do it. they committed it. That's the point. We don't know it, whether they will achieve it or not, but we will do our all the best with all the scientists like Chris from WWF and many others to help Toyota to achieve it. Let us help Samsung, Hyundai, everybody in Korean industry to achieve that together. I think for that reason I came here. Not stopping at the private sector, we went to local government as well. My boss, Mr. Tokugawa, who is the 18th descendant of a Tokugawa family who governed Japan for more than 260 years. This is a very sustainable family, right? Therefore, it's good to talk about sustainable Japan for the next centuries with Mr. Tokugawa. With him, I went to the city of Yokohama and saw the mayor to turn Yokohama as a carbon zero residential area. And we have ratified the comprehensive collaboration agreement with the city of Yokohama. And also our colleague, Dr. Konishi, Masako Konishi, who attended the IPCC meeting last week, went to Metropolitan Tokyo government to see Governor Koike, who used to be environmental minister of Japan, to commit to the carbon zero metropolis. And they helped us to make the Earth Hour this year in Tokyo, and we are keeping dialogue. And maybe Olympic will be a good turning point to move for a carbon zero society scenario. And afterwards, many of the cities such as Kyoto or Hiroshima and Toyama is going to join the C40 initiative, which is not necessarily driven by WWF, but they're moving toward the real sustainable carbon zero society through these consortium as well. But these things is very frustrating, very tense, very kind of energy-consuming things, but we are enjoying our work. Unfortunately, we don't have help from Citibank Japan yet. Therefore, we have to earn money to have this kind of a conference. To enjoy the fundraising, we have asked Sony Corporation to give us 11 Aibo robotic dogs, and we put it into the Yahoo auction, and we generated more than $100,000. We wanted to approach to young ladies like this in this conference room to talk about the risk of climate change and endangered species. We went to the nail designer's parlor, to show that we have many varieties of the animal patterns to put on your nail. So if you like it, please give us a donation. It didn't work so well. We don't get much money, but still many young people are paying attention to the climate change and endangered species. In Japan, instead of signing the paper, we use the stamp, name stamp. And the design is free. So we accommodate some of the endangered species figure into the part of their Chinese character. And this sells a lot. And we are very rich now, thanks to this stamp. So enjoying these fundraising is one of the aspects of working at NGO. We want to be very creative. We don't want to follow the path of other people. We want to be very unique and different from others. In closing, I want to quote the famous word of the John F. Kennedy, the 35th President of the United States, who mentioned, "Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country." But important phrases are coming afterwards. He continued, "My fellow citizens of the world, ask not what America will do for you, but what together we can do for the freedom of man." I like this phrase much better. So today, I'd like to ask you to act together to stop the climate change and save our blue planet. If we work together, I think we can achieve it. So let's not give up our hope, and let's try for it. Thank you very much.
네,